Here is the Unify podcast with Aaron and William.
Perfect.
Anyway.
That was good. That was good, man. I like that.
Oh, so how you doing, Aaron? How's things been?
I'm good. I'm good. I got a personal anecdote for you.
All right.
I've had a pigeon problem at my place for like a few weeks.
Yeah.
And it used to be the case that, because I got chickens, it would be the case that I'd put out the bird seed, the chickens would eat it, pigeons would come and try and eat it, and then a bunch of magpies would chase the pigeons away.
Mm.
But no, it turns out that like the magpies have stopped, and I thought they were breeding or something because it's like their breeding season. This morning I caught my little chicken, like my little timid chicken that you can't even get close to. A magpie tried to land in the yard and she went for it. Like, you know, when like those fighting roosters?
Yeah.
She went for it. Like, and the magpie wasn't as quick to take off as it wanted to be, I guess. And she got it like pinned behind the smoker in the fence. And this magpie's like freaking out. And I
Jeez.
was like, holy shit, like my most timid little chicken is the aggressive one.
It's the hidden personality traits. That magpie would have been terrified. Imagine the difference in size between a chicken and a magpie. Like,
Yeah, well, that's the thing because when they were little, like we put them out in the yard. I don't know, they were like 10 weeks old, maybe. Like they're only half the size they are now, and the magpies used to just smash them. And the chickens were roughly equal size to them back then because the magpies, you know, they're not quite the size of a full-grown chicken,
mm,
but the chickens were just like they're way clumsier. They're not as nimble, and the magpies used to just give them hell.
yeah.
But two of my chickens, so I got three. Two of them would be pretty good at like run, take cover, get away from the magpie. But the little one, she's too skittish for it.
Mm,
And then she would get like she'd try hide behind like a pot plant or whatever. And then because the magpie can fly and it's not as like, you know, stupid, that's not going to work on it. The magpie would just torment her and like I'd have to go outside and like chase the magpie away.
oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Sounds like a little bit of
And then
built-up resentment from the little chicken.
yeah, now that she's bigger than a magpie and one landed in the yard, I mean, I guess she's just been giving him hell for like the last like 10 weeks,
The
and it annoys me because she's got this aggression, but she's not using it on the pigeons, and I don't know how to redirect it.
Wow, that's so weird because it's almost like the pigeons haven't done her any wrong. So she's got this kind of low-level moral adjustment
Yeah, yeah,
towards it where they're like, "Oh, that's a bully, so I better bully it back."
yeah. Chicken ethics, bro. It's a whole thing.
Oh my God, that is hilarious. Like it's bizarre because you want the ecosystem to work how you want it to, but you've got an insider just ruining all of it.
Yeah, yeah. But the thing is, because there's too much seed out, because like these pigeons, man, they're crafty. Because I got a lot of big trees here, like a
Mm.
lot. Um, there'll be like 40 pigeons up in these big trees. Like at the moment, I'm standing out here and I can count like seven, and I
Mm.
know that there's more. I just can't see them. I'll leave out the seed. I'll go inside, and the pigeons will come down and just strip the entire feeding thing.
Yeah, because they're
And
used to
then,
just like they're used to like tack running and kind of you know get
yeah,
in while
yeah.
the getting's good and get the fuck out.
And then because I come out and like I'll refill it because I'm like, well, shit, like the chicken's got to have food. So I'll refill it. And then I've only been putting in like a small amount of seed, but I have a feeling nearly all of it's been going to pigeons.
Oh, that's
And
so
like I'm just
bad.
watching. Yeah. So they're coming here because essentially I'm feeding them. Like I didn't realize to the extent that I was doing it, but like I'm even watching my chickens now. They're just scratching around eating grass and bugs and stuff.
They're not even
Like I
eating
don't
the
even know if
chicken feed.
yeah, they don't even care for it that much. So
It's probably their
I
last
don't know.
resort. They're probably just like, oh, yep, I guess the yard's empty, so I better just eat something.
Yeah,
Then you've got
yeah,
malnourished chickens. You've got the community of fucking pigeon thieves taking all your feed. And it's like,
yeah, yeah. Well, that's it. And it's like, see, that's the thing because I don't think they'll get a chance to get malnourished because I got so many plants and like there's all these bugs and stuff. Like they eat all day. Like you know, like they're just like big fat chickens. and you can graze chickens. So, like I've heard about this, but I don't know if with such a small amount of land, I feel comfortable letting them sort of fend for themselves without me putting out a little bit of extra feed just to make sure that they're all sorted.
Yeah, absolutely. And considering you're relying on them for, not only eggs, but also to take care of your garden and stuff and fertilize stuff, and you got that circular kind of momentum going
Mm.
with the chickens. You want to make sure they're all good and happy, and if that's sacrificing some food to some fucking thieves.
Yeah. Oh man, it's been a whole fucking thing. Anyway.
Oh my God, that's crazy, man. That's a bizarre thing to take notice of when you actually just sit and like
Yeah,
watch it.
yeah, no, I like that sort of stuff. Like, I like just being out here and just watching and seeing how things work.
Mm.
Like,
See, I'm wondering because like if the chicken's got a resentful thing going on, like it must be low level when it comes to like remembering things from the past. If the magpie's like, you know, hassling the chicken when it's younger, the chicken can remember and now the passive chicken is really aggressive. I wonder if that's like a real low level thing where it's like maybe it's even harder to control it from like the lower kind of cognitive level of a chicken. And it seems to be
yeah,
that
I don't know.
there might
This chicken's dumb, man. Like, like I
following
mean, like
full
really dumb.
impulse.
Like, I moved the gate because the gate used to be 3 meters from where it is now, and she still like she cannot find it.
Wow.
Like, I have to keep like guiding her to the gate sometimes because she starts running into the fence where the gate used to be. She's like, it's not budging, and I'm like, it's not there anymore. Like,
Oh, that object permanence thing, hey. It's,
yeah, yeah.
I
I
get that
don't
the
know. The
same thing with
chicken's
the
so weird.
I get that same thing with the cat though, with my cat. Like we my partner's very festive, so she always like changes things from Halloween to Christmas, and we've just got a whole bunch of Christmas decorations up. And the cat's been interested in, playing with the tree and everything, but she's got these little Santa things all around the house. And I watch her, my cat like walks around the house, notices it for the first time because it doesn't move, and goes, "What the fuck? That's been there the whole time." And it's like,
Oh, animals, man.
and that's the same thing with us as well. Like as a perception thing, if things don't move, we're just like, yeah, business as usual. Like, um, my partner moved a bunch of my musical instruments from one side of the room to the other, and I didn't notice for like 3 or 4 weeks because it wasn't important to me.
I get you, man.
Yeah.
I got the exact same stuff going on all the time.
Yeah, like I don't know. It's bizarre that it's not a big gap between us and a chicken.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
All right. Okay. So for the topic today, we said we'd do compound interest, but I reckon we're making a mistake.
All right. Hit me with
I
it.
reckon we tackle investing on a more foundational level before we worry about compound interest.
All right.
And then maybe get to compound interest at the end. But yeah.
Yeah, no problems. We'll do our best to try and get through as much as we can in the next 50 minutes.
All right. I'll tell you what. This is where I reckon we begin because this is everything on a foundational level.
All right.
The first part of really even reaching the point where an investment makes sense is to identify what you currently have in the form of capital, as well as working out, what you can do, like labor wise, to be able to transform your capital into something that is, or just to get some productive output. That's a good way to say it.
Yeah.
This is I think the mistake a lot of people make with investing is they'll be in a life that is full of opportunity as well as problems, and they're very on a local level, like even on like a personal level. But instead of sorting out that level first and then building upwards, they try jump straight to property or straight to the stock market.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really work because you go.
I was just gonna say it's almost like they're trying to bite off too much more than they can chew, and it's like you got to start low level.
Yeah, and it's like, well, if you invest $5,000 in stocks and then get a $2,000 mechanics bill, but you don't have any savings, and then you've got to sell your stocks. It's like the whole investment anyway it's like the risk was with you.
Yeah. Like you've put too much value on how would I say, your ability to cope with your current expenses to be able to actually have a solidified investment.
Yeah. So let's talk about that really quick. So first thing with identifying capital that you have, I'm using the economics version of capital, which is essentially anything that can be used in productivity. That like that'll do it. Very broad. Like if I list all the things, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I get you.
So the main ones for people in like their local personal situation, like you got a computer, probably. You got a phone, probably. You likely have some form of transportation in the form of, van, ute, car, etc. Probably got some tools, hopefully know how to use some of them to do something. And then you've got knowledge, you've got skills, you've got sort of personal attributes. This is like, in a way, when you make an investment, you get a portfolio. Like you might have 5 companies or property and, maybe you got some cash or something, and you call that your portfolio.
It's not
looking
only
at
that, it's the skills. It's the skills as well. Like a lot of the stuff you were talking about just before, it's like really low level. It's almost like the ability to make like physical money capital off your skills as well.
Yeah, exactly. So this is if you've got 0 investments, this is your current portfolio, and we should start there before we worry about building off into giving some rich guy some money to do something.
Yeah. And like the funny thing is some people are starting from a debt perspective as well. Like I just want to briefly say, it's like some people are like 20 grand into debt on a car loan as well, and that's a part of your investment portfolio as well.
Yeah, if you're in that position, it's probably best to pay off that debt, really prioritize it, and then see, the thing that's annoying about loans like that, this is what I hate about it, is you can spend a little while trying to get some excess money, and then if you borrow money for a car, you can essentially spend your excess money for the next 5 years on a car.
Yeah.
Like, at a loan that's like $150 a week, like, that's a lot of, oh God.
Yeah.
I mean, like if you've only got $200 a week spare and you're spending $150 on it on a car, like that's all your money essentially. Like a lot of people are in that position.
Yeah. Sorry, not to derail or anything, but I feel like
Right.
yeah, it's just like keep in mind debt is is a part of the investment portfolio.
Yeah. Like currently for me, because I spent so many years without having any excess money, just because I was setting up, investments, and
you're preparing
one of the
for the
things
future.
I did. Yeah, like I set up for a property investment while studying full time. So like as I was doing that degree to like invest in my future, I was also saving and spending all the money to get my apartment. So like I had no extra money.
Yeah, you were playing on hard mode.
Yeah. And then now it's been it's been a few years and all that, and now I've got extra money again. And then it's so funny to think that after all this time, I could easily get rid of my newfound extra money just by buying me and my girlfriend a new car each. Like that would that'd fucking suck, man. It wouldn't feel worth it, I'm sure.
No, it's not gratifying because you don't own the car. The bank owns the car. And that's what I've never understood about it. Is like I've been very skeptical of loans as well, unless I absolutely have to, like a car loan or something like that. Because it's like you don't own the stocks, you don't own the car. It's like the bank owns the car and you're using it, and the bank owns you.
Yeah, dude, that's awful way to be. Like, really, because one of the things that happens too when you're in debt, and like because I got 2 mortgages, I'm massively in debt. I'm very aware of this all the time. Is that there's a feeling that when you're working for someone else, and it can be a very demotivating feeling. Like I'm not a big fan of it. Like sometimes I'll go to work and I'll essentially lose everything to like mortgage repayments, which, you know, that's for the bank. And like I do get the properties and all that, but
It's like a fraction of what you pay goes towards your property, and I'm aware of that as well. And it it's very tight. It's really sad because you're restricted in a sense that you've got to work because you got to pay these bills. But at the same time, it's like the motivation hit is the thing that kills me. It's like I would rather be recording another episode of this on a day, but I have to get up and go to work. It's really annoying because I've already been working for so many years to try and, pay things off and stuff like that. But that's just like kind of this our lot. That's the world at the moment.
yeah, that's it. You know, yeah, like you got to get some money together, and one of the easiest ways to do it is to just get a couple properties and fucking just do it for a few years. You know, get it done.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, between mortgage repayments and taxes, like fuck, man, I got no money.
Yeah, I get you. And like, I think that's the normal state, really. Like, unless you're highly educated, lucky, and also skilled, which is you can kind of set that up. And I think that's what you were trying to get at before with like the investing, like setting up initial investments, kind of conceptualizing your skills and what you have in front of you and everything like that. It's like you're trying to conceptualize a launching point to get what you need, what you want, and to build a life that you want because it's not impossible. It's just hard and it takes commitment.
Yeah, it's that's the thing. Yeah, it's really hard. And if you have, let's say, drive, well, here's the thing. If you're intelligent, you can measure how essentially intelligent you are by whether or not you're getting what you want out of life.
Hmm.
And then if you're driven, like, that's another thing that you can use to say, well, I think I'm driven. I think I'm motivated. Like, I think I'm working hard. It's like, well, are you being rewarded for it? And if the answer's no, then, well, something's wrong there. Like, you should, if you're working hard and you're working intelligently, you should be getting what you want, or at least it should be on its way,
Yeah. Are you a magpie getting fucked up by a chicken? Or are you, the pigeon that's just taking everything that you want?
That's
Oh,
it,
uh,
that's
we
um
we call that the birds of prey and the birds of gluttony. No.
yeah, okay.
All right. So before I derailed into the debt conversation, we were talking about conceptualizing your skills and where you're sitting, like investment wise. And if you're sitting at rock
Yeah,
bottom, is where we were talking from.
yeah. So everything that you have is your capital, and that's what you're going to use to invest with. But we gotta lay out the parameters, because if you get the parameters right, you will actually be rewarded. I'll
Mm,
talk about that a little bit more in a second. Because no, you know what? I'll
tasty.
do it now. Here's a good example. Sometimes there's like, if you're, say, lifting weights, you'll have a lift that you're stuck on, and you'll be stuck at a particular point on the lift.
Yeah.
Like, deadlifting's a good example. With getting the bar off the ground, if you can't move it that first inch to kind of get it off the ground, that's an indication. I mean, it could indicate many things, but generally, so long as your form's good and everything, it's an indication that your quads are now, let's say, weaker than they should be. They're not strong enough to lift that weight.
Yeah. You've got
They're
a
the thing that,
you got a
yeah,
weak point in the system at that point.
exactly. So what you can do is you can train like an exercise like front squats. That will strengthen your quads, and then that first tiny bit of that deadlift is going to be a lot easier. Like, as you gain a little bit of strength in the quads, the initial bit of the deadlift becomes easier.
Mm.
So what you've done is, like, you've done one exercise to improve the point that you were stuck on in another exercise.
Okay. Yeah, I get
This
you.
is, yeah, this is the way that we also need to invest, because why would you invest in such a way that you're not getting, let's say, what you want now as well as what you need in the future? Like, why would you just, like, why would you invest out of alignment with that? um so if you're living in a life where you don't have a car, that's going to limit you. substantially in
Yeah.
just about every day. That's going to limit you. Obviously, exceptions with people living in certain places, blah blah blah, but it doesn't matter. Let's say you don't have a computer or a phone, like it doesn't matter.
You can't discredit the utility of a mobile phone or a car though. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
just
So
have someone who's sick and you don't have a
yeah,
car. You're fucking. Oh, anyway.
yeah, exactly. So if you are making an investment, like, why would you invest $20,000 into, like, long term stock investments when it's like you don't have a phone today?
Mm.
This is the thing that is kind of frustrating, and this is the thing that we got to get right. And I'll keep laying out the foundation of this, but you need to make the right investments at the right time for the right reasons so that you essentially have some success. Like buying stocks when you need, some little thing in your life to make things substantially better, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It's like having that deadlift scenario where you can't get the weight off the ground, and it's like going and training bench press. It's like it's not the right response here. Like, yes, it's still investment, like, that's still working out, but it's the wrong order, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, like there's a classic example in my life where I had a lower back injury, and it's like nowadays from experience and also time, it's like I know that if I start to get back pain on a back day, I have to go and do a whole bunch of rollout exercises and I have to do a bunch of stretching so that way I can get back to the game instead of powering through. Similar kind of
Yeah,
metaphor.
exactly like that. Exactly like that. Okay, so capital, we'll lay out the mechanism for capital, but the next part that's part of it is labor.
Hmm.
So you combine capital with labor to get some sort of payoff. And then in some ways that's work, but in other ways it's investment. That they share a relationship,
Yeah.
which is actually a little hard to untangle if you, I mean, we'll continue. So when it comes to labor, if you can't focus, like, if you can't focus at all, that's, once again, I'm going to start using the term bottleneck now. This is a bottleneck that needs to be addressed,
Yeah.
because you get your best mental work done when your focus is good. It's focused work is so much better than unfocused work. It's just,
Yeah.
you can't even compare the two, really.
I agree, and
um
it's also important to highlight that you only get a few hours of that a day.
yeah, it's like, if you can get 3 hours of good focus in a day, you're crushing it. Like,
Yeah. It burns up so much mental energy, hey.
yeah, and it can be extended. Like, it's kind of like there's a little bit of like a repetition thing. Like the more you do it, it's kind of like a muscle. But there's a whole heap of things like sleep, nutrition, your emotional state.
Hmm.
There's all these potential bottlenecks for focus. And like, if you're in a position where you can't focus for whatever it is, like, bad relationships always having you stressed out, and because you're stressed out, you can't even think because you keep circling around in bad thoughts.
Like large workload, a lot of other things like that, yeah.
You eat a double quarter pounder and you put a chicken patty on it as well, and then that completely fucks
Yeah.
every level in your body, and you end up in a position where you're just in a comatose fucking fat coma. Like,
I love those states. No, it's funny because me
yeah,
and Andrew were talking about this the other week when we were talking about if you've got health and you've got the ability to get up in the morning, that's a skill in its own, and that makes you hireable in some regards.
yeah. Yeah, I saw an African guy on Twitter. All he has is a mobile phone, and he's going for a software dev job because he's just committed. He's got a mobile phone. He's got the ability to code, which he's given himself. He's in a very poor part of Africa, and that's enough.
Yeah, we all want to be that guy.
Exactly, man. It's like a little bit of focus and just a tiny bit of capital, and you can like weirdly enough, man, you can make it.
Yeah, because
And
people
the
are
other,
coming out of India and stuff, and they're just like crushing it. Like, and it's far, it's
oh yeah,
crazy.
yeah, dude, it's amazing. Like, it's an absolute testament to the power of like these little computers that we carry in our pockets, what they can do for people who are willing to, let's say, go all in on them. Because like I just use my phone really for just messing around. Like,
Yeah, well, like out of the 100% that you've got it, I use mine probably 60% on entertainment, and like then the rest of it's split up, and it's like,
actually, there is a lie. I do use the Unify app to help myself get organized, but
yeah,
apart from that, I'm just doing mindless stuff.
which is crazy because that's a tool that we've built on our own accord. So it's like without that, that fucking phone can. Anyway, I don't want to digress too much.
Yeah, well, that's why I built it. Just I knew I was in that pattern. Okay. The other thing is outside of focus, physically active. Can you be physically active? Some people just literally can't do it. That's
Yeah,
not good.
dude,
Um,
I feel for those people because I have no idea what it's like.
yeah. Oh, dude, it's rough. Like, especially if you end up in a position where, um, like when I had my lower back injury at the start of last year, I couldn't stand for more than like a couple minutes,
Yeah,
and that made everything impossible. Like, like,
yeah,
and then obviously there's people who have, let's say, actual medical conditions that probably aren't ever going to pursue a labor job because it's just not going to work for them. But I mean, in more of a general sense, like, are you able to be active from get up in the morning, begin the day, expending energy, not just mental energy, but also physical energy, and let's say sustain that for enough time to get something done? And if the answer is no, then you've got some work to do.
yeah.
You're probably going to want to get on top of that because it's going to be very hard to do anything. Um, so that's pretty much the two components of labor anyway. It's like focus and ability to be physically active.
There's also the thing of doing stuff for yourself and not just for your job as well. Because you can have a job that's building, you know, finances and stuff like that, but like you've also got to have time to do stuff for yourself that's productive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's a funny thing because some people can work under great stress if it's for someone else because they don't want to let that person down, and other people can work for themselves, like they're just real like self-motivators, self-starters.
Mm.
And I think it's good to be both. Like if you can build the, I don't know, maybe it's discipline or drive or the desire to work for yourself, like on like the productive, like the local level, you can really improve things.
Yeah, and like massively. But anyway, there were the two components of
Yeah,
yeah.
of labor. So
Yeah.
moving forward, this is like I was talking about before. A lot of people get investing wrong. You've got to identify capital thresholds, and capital thresholds in economics terms. So if you Google it, there's like academic style definitions, but here's the easiest way to understand it. You just got to look to your limits. It's like before with the focus or the physical activity or the not having a car, not having a phone. Look for where that limit is. And if you were to cross that limit, would it reduce unnecessary suffering for yourself? Like one way you can do it, you can just say to yourself, how am I suffering unnecessarily? And then you can find out the way to put a stop to that.
Can you give us an example
Um,
of that?
yeah, well, I think a good example is, well, let's say this would be maybe it's a silly example, but it's really hot here. It's always so hot. It's too
Yeah.
hot where we live for people to live. Get an aircon.
Oh, I see your point. Yeah.
Like, especially if it's the case that it's too hot at night for you to sleep well, and then you're tired because you've never had a chance to, let your core body temperature go to like a human level. because it's so hot where we live.
Okay, yeah, I get you, and I think that gives a little bit of light to the definition of capital threshold from our perspective.
yeah, yeah. And it's a little hard because in some ways you could say like, okay, I used to use matches. I don't really like using matches. Now I bought a cigarette lighter, and the cigarette lighter reduced some needless suffering, but the payoff is so small that it's like, you don't even think about it in investment terms. It's just that sort of problem you should just autopilot through.
Yeah,
What I'm more talking about is things where the payoff is significant, like better sleep because you've purchased aircon. That's significant. That affects so many areas of your life.
or like an example I'm thinking of is like if you're having trouble getting into a habit of eating consistently, getting the right cooking utensils and learning how to use them and stuff is definitely something that affects the capital threshold.
Yes, that's exactly right. Because it's like if you don't need to go hungry, why are you going hungry? Like especially if you live in a place where there's plenty of food.
Yeah, and it's like I think it's important to highlight here that if you're working not only towards a goal and also working towards productivity of yourself, you'll also have you'll need to eat and you'll need to get a good night's sleep to be able to focus on these things. Like
Yeah,
it it's
100%.
it becomes like a thing you need to do. It's like there's no two ways about it. I need to get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, it's these are the sorts of levels where you got to begin. Otherwise, you're going to end up in a position where maybe you managed to get a property and you have a mortgage, but it's like you're exhausted and starving, and then everything falls apart, 2 years in, and you've picked up a health condition along the way to go with probably a ruined financial situation.
Mm.
It's like, you got to get it right on the foundational level before you continue.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. I can see the picture that you're trying to build here.
Yeah. And this is why it's kind of a dumb word. I wrote it down. I was doing notes for the show and I thought it was just funny. I wrote down the word goal vesting.
Coalescing.
Goal vesting, man. Yep.
Oh,
Stupid. It just made me laugh.
no, it's got some merit to it though, because it's like,
Yeah, it's like if I was writing like a management course, I could probably get away with that.
dude, you could probably put that on up on Urban Dictionary and it'd probably pass.
So that's identifying where the addition of a piece of capital would be a reduction in your suffering, as well as working out how to achieve the goal.
It's interesting here though because it's like we were talking about debt before, and I like it's talking. I want to kind of bring up the idea of a liability because it's like you've got a lot of needless suffering if you're paying fucking $300 a week in rent. It's like that's a whole bunch of like useful capital that you could have elsewhere, and it's like
Yeah,
live
yeah, and
by. You go.
we should just say $300 a week in rent is a ton of money. I hear people be like, "Oh, I got a place for 500," and it's like a 3-bedroom house that's fucking just like it's a regular place to live. Meanwhile, my apartment mortgage is like it's like 200 a week. It's under that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So just in case people haven't heard that, I always make a point to tell people when it comes up, mortgages at the moment at the current interest rates are less than rent, and substantially so. So got to be aware of that.
Yeah, and like it's like the concept of a liability is like you got like for me it's like there's time liabilities, there's asset liabilities, and there's also just general kind of money liabilities. And like if you're a kind of person that has 5 or 6 different movie subscription platforms, it's like you've got to kind of look at that because that's a whole bunch of wasted capital.
Yeah, man. And that's the thing. People don't realize that we're all so rich. And like you hear people say it and people be like, "Oh, yeah, but everything's so expensive." And it's like, "Yes, but also no." Like
You don't have to buy everything. Everything's so expensive, but you don't have to buy everything.
Yeah, exactly. And like I think my house and apartment mortgage together is like 460 a week, something like that.
Which is what you'd be
And
paying in rent for your house, or maybe
yeah,
even
it
your
is.
apartment. Like,
Yeah, yeah. If I was to be a real shark about trying to charge the maximum rent for my apartment, I reckon I could get a tenant in for way more than I currently have. But I don't want to,
yeah,
it's like I think about society and all that, and I decide I don't want to do that.
yeah, and like I don't want to derail too much, but like there's the Stoic principle of living minimalistically, not just to get assets or anything like that, but having a minimalistic life is quite nice as well. Plus, you have money to fix problems like sleeping patterns and everything like that. It's like some of the happiest people I know have a simple diet, go to the gym, and they live their life.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's like eat well, sleep well, work out, work minimally, and just use that extra time and money in between those things to just live. Like,
Yeah,
no need to take on massive debts to have things that you think you want, but then once you have them for 6 months, you don't care about them at all.
yeah.
Like,
And
like
it's like when you have a brand new car and stuff like that, it can break in 3 weeks. Which it's
oh
like
yeah, I
that's that
always feel bad when that happens to people.
yeah, and it's like yeah, a cheap car can also break in 3 weeks, but at least you know that it's probably more likely. And when it happens, you don't get that emotional shock of when you have a brand new car and it breaks in 3 weeks and then you can't get to work. Like,
Yeah, actually, I got a point here too because we looked into getting a new car for Morgan, because we drive really old cars and like we got the money to be able to pay for it, and there was was it 2 year or 3 year? Sorry, yeah, January 2024 was the earliest she could get the car that she wanted, and it's 2021 now, December. That's the wait on a new car at the moment. Um, and a lot of new cars are like this. It's very hard to get your hands on them at the moment.
hmm,
And the reason for this, not to be too alarming, is essentially global supply chains are in disarray. And we don't know what products we're going to be able to get in the near term. But it probably will be the case that some things that we currently, let's say, take for granted are going to disappear. And probably not permanently, but
you
as
gotta,
we go into this new period of economic instability, I would really focus on having a good foundation.
yeah, yeah, and get used to not having certain things. Like, I say that because I've been training myself because I literally only have cold showers because, well, not only do I get health benefits from just having cold showers, but it's like if they turn the hot waters off, I'm happy still. Like that could
Yeah,
kill
I
some
get you,
people,
man.
you know?
Oh yeah, yeah, 100%.
It just always makes me remember that bloody guy in the labor camp in Viktor Frankl's book and also the Gulag where his shoelace breaks and then he's literally dead. Like he's so sad and
Yeah,
dead and then he
yes,
dies. And it's like you gotta
yeah,
not be
that's
like that.
yeah, yeah. Like you gotta. It's like you want to have everything you need on the foundational level to weather any crisis that's coming, whether or not we get some big, like, on like the geopolitical level, proper like international economy in shambles situation, or a personal crisis, because hell, you might even get both at the same time, like
It's probably highly likely that you'll get both at the same time.
that's true. Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah.
And some people are going to have a very rough run. Like it might be that the same day that you can't purchase fuel is the day that you find out that, like, a loved one has cancer, and you're going to have to navigate both of those at the same time. And
Yeah, and not buckle and also be productive as well. But
yeah,
in saying that, in a time of stability, is also just after the time of stability is the perfect time to have some capital together to do some investing.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And that's why, yeah, got to get the foundation right.
Yeah.
Um, So that's the other thing too. Let's say once you get that foundational level somewhat sorted, like, there's less things that you can just acquire, like there's less quick things.
Yeah.
Time starts to become the bottleneck that you need to kind of address. So once it gets to the point where you're like, okay, for me to advance, I need to maybe, well, for instance, if you're going to study, if you decide that the thing that's holding you back is that you haven't been to university to study whatever it is that you want to study, then it may be the case that you can't just start studying straight away. You might have to wait for the semester to begin. So you might get like a few months, and then in those few months where you're kind of idle, you want to make sure that you're pursuing other things and constantly kind of like circling these little investments back in on one another, where it's like, while you wait to study, do some reading for what you're going to study, so that when you get there, the likelihood that you'll fail will be substantially less, and so on.
I agree. And also, one of the things that helped me when I was studying was like when I was preparing to go and study, I would also make sure I'd be like, okay, well, I need to plan out where I'm going to park, where I'm going to, like, I got to take a water bottle with me because I need water, I need food with me, I need to make sure that I have all my online platforms and stuff mapped out and stuff like that. I need to know that um they're kind of the course goals and everything like that. Like there's the point I'm trying to make here is that there's a whole bunch of things that you can do when you think you can't do anything.
Yeah, there's always heaps. Anytime there's an abundance, you can just be preparing for when that abundance is no longer there.
And then in some regards, you end up becoming the one that facilitates. Like what I'm trying to say here is, like, when I was studying statistics in my course, I found out that after a while there was a lack in kind of competence between the students because no one was teaching it very well. Therefore, I was able to pick up some part-time work as a statistics tutor, and most of my students passed with high grades. And it's like that's an investment in capital on my skills that instantly made me earn more money at a higher pay rate.
It's good too, because that investment you were able to do while studying. So it's like, while you were trapped in a 3-4 year, whatever it is for your degree commitment, you were able to do more investing that served the bigger goal while simultaneously setting you up for other avenues that you might not have even expected were going to become possible. And like, it's just because you kept moving, like, and that's the way to do it.
Yeah, I agree. And I just think that, like, highlighting the fact that there is things that you can do is sometimes enough.
Yeah. So to talk about property, because, like, there's always the multi-year commitment of study, and there's always more that you can be doing, but I feel like property's a little, it's definitely more rewarding than study, I would say. And it's harder to navigate, I reckon.
Absolutely.
So saving, let's say you're going to need a deposit to buy property, a $40,000 deposit is going to take you 2 years if you save $400 a week.
Yeah, good luck when you're paying $300 in rent a week, let alone,
Yeah, it's so brutal. And this is the thing that people, I feel like they're not taking this seriously enough. They say properties have become unaffordable, and yes, but also
I don't know, because I also think that the luxuries and the things that we can buy also have become complicated. Like, there's a lot of shit you can buy. You can go out and spend $450 on a Deadpool figurine. Like, good luck doing
so
that in the past.
Yeah, I got a chicken coming over.
Dude, it's so funny. I've been hearing little clucks in the background, and it really sets the atmosphere. But
she got to weigh in.
Yeah, she's like a bark, Deadpool.
Yeah. I'll just keep moving forward anyway. So saving that $40,000 is something that you're going to need to, let's say, make big changes for. Like, you're probably going to have to live with many roommates to get your rent costs low enough to be able to have that kind of money to even be able to save. You'll probably need to work a little bit more to be able to get the excess money. You'll have to spend less to be able to, put the money away. Like, to get your hands on property, it's a massive multi-year commitment.
Yeah.
And I think it can be done. I just think that you need to be almost militant about it to do it in today's market.
Not only that, it's like you've got to make the point that I'm trying to bring up in this particular sentence is that, there's a lot of decisions that you can make that can cost you hundreds of dollars a week. Like the classic thing that I'm thinking of is like addiction, consumer goods, or like just bad choices, like, buying McDonald's every night. And it's like you've got to kind of conceptualize all these points because they're the things that are going to kill you. It's like I think at one point there when I was in chaos, I was spending like $300 a week on food, when if I went to the shops it would have been 110 and I would have been healthier.
Yeah. Those sorts of payoffs, you've got to just you got when you spot them, you've got to take them. You don't be an idiot for longer than you need to be.
Yeah.
And like both of us did kind of like the militant thing to get properties in our own way, and it's very difficult. Like,
yeah, and it's a mindset thing, and it's also like I think we're up on the upper echelon of like discipline in that regard, because it's like even from a young age, I remember I was really obsessed with money, and I always wanted to make money, just because I respected people that made money, and it's like if you need to kind of have a conceptualization of why you're doing these things, because otherwise you're going to bottom out real quick.
Oh yeah, it's so hard, and it's funny because in general it was hard, but the hard moments were so hard it was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, I remember having like finding out that a friend of mine had died in a car accident, and having a marketing assignment due, and needing the money from work to be able to meet the expenses as well as continue to save for a property. And it was so brutal because, like, even though my friend died, I just literally took 15 minutes off, went back to work, and got the marketing assignment done. And then I fucking played Bulletstorm in the evening as I was sitting there, just shell shocked that my friend had died. But like, hey, at least the work was done. And I was playing Bulletstorm, and dude, the thing that annoyed the fuck out of me, I didn't even like Bulletstorm. I was so annoyed. I like broke my rule of like buying this fucking game, and then it's not even good.
Yeah.
Oh wait, no, sorry, it wasn't Bulletstorm. It was Wolfenstein.
Oh, I remember you talking about this. Yeah.
Yeah. It annoyed the hell out of me, man. And like, like those moments were dark, and it would have been completely reasonable for me to just say, hey, I'm taking some time, because that was unreasonable.
Some people would even say that's the healthy thing as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it would be, but that's the damn problem with having no money. Health. Like, if you want money and you've got no money, health is secondary, and it fucking sucks, and it's not fair.
Dude,
and
I got a classic example from my life about this as well, which is really shit, because I remember I got into a fucking car crash with my brand new car, so I didn't have fucking insurance set up. Not brand new as in, like, bought brand new, but, like, the car that I bought secondhand that was, like, my dream car that was only, like, $2,500, and I had a car crash, like, because of circumstances and stuff. And then for, like, 3 months leading up to the payment of that insurance, because I didn't have insurance on my car, it was a $3,000 bill, and it was not a bad car crash at all. And I literally saved the money. I didn't fucking dip into my savings for that shit. I fucking worked overtime, put the money aside, and then was like, yep, there's the $3,000 out of the last 3 months. Those 3 months killed me.
Oh, I hate that, dude. I know exactly, and it's like, yeah, it's so difficult. Like, that's the thing. It's so difficult. And, God, you just gotta, Well, you don't have to do it, you know? Like, you don't have to do it. That's also the thing. It's like, here we are torturing ourselves. We don't technically have to.
Yeah.
Like,
And it's funny because a lot of people wouldn't. And it's like the difference between us and them, I think, is that, we've got property and stuff, so we've got things that to show for it, but fuck, it was painful, fucking hell. And it's like you've got to conceptualize that this it's gonna be hard to get a baseline investment, but it's just up and up from there.
yeah. Also, if anybody's wondering why Andrew's on the podcast, it's because he's the voice of reason in these situations who would be like, no, that's not good or what.
Yeah, just take the day off, you fucking psycho. Just go home. I was re-listening back to that episode and I was like, Andrew's literally the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah, well, we'll see if he overtakes us.
Nah, but I think if you've got no other points, I think this is the foundation groundwork that needs to be established before you can even start thinking about investing. And it's
I'll recap as well because I got we have covered kind of like a little model here, but I'll see if I can make it clear in other examples.
Shoot.
So we got, let's say you can invest in your personal life, but once you kind of get that foundation built, you can do it for a job. At your job, I should say. Like, you can build investing into your day-to-day actions at your job. So the way to do it there is you've got to look at the system that you're in, that you work for, and essentially every business or government department or whatever, these little systems are set up in response to some sort of suffering that the system addresses. So there was some suffering, turned out to be needless, and now the system is there to get rid of that suffering. You've got to identify what that is for your situation, for the place that you work for.
I see your point. And like it can be ground level as well. Like it doesn't have to be something really important. It's like the micro can really impact the macro.
Yeah, well, for us, for example, like in hospitality, people are hungry. They don't need to be because we can feed them, and they pay us to feed them. That's essentially how it works. So hungry people need to be fed. But then in our system, we've got, multiple people doing multiple roles, and not everyone's making food all the time. There's, let's say, when you're cleaning, it's like, why are you cleaning? And it's like, well, we can't have a shop where people get food poisoning because that would be a bunch of needless suffering that we would actually be dishing out in the world rather than, reducing. So when we're cleaning, it's so that everything can be, sanitary, so that the food can be put out in such a way that people are left full and not sick. And, it's like, you've got to identify the way that the system reduces needless suffering. And then from there, you can look for ineffectiveness, inefficiency, and risk, and you can address these things. And this is similar to training the quads for the deadlift if you can't get the bar off the ground. This is like looking in the system that you're in for that exact bottleneck that, if addressed, would make everything better. And once you can find those and start addressing them, you can essentially, everything can lift. You can really start to feel it when someone's doing that.
Yeah, and that's awesome from me and Andrew's conversation, because we were talking about building skills and building, say, a platform of like an individual kind of respect factor where you make changes and things turn out better, and then people start to respect you, and like all these things flow into like a multiple compounding asset. And it's like identifying some of those smaller things is, I think, it could be a whole topic for another episode as well, because there's a bunch of things that come to my mind. Like via negative is one of them. The bottlenecks,
that's a really good one.
Yeah, there's a lot of them that we've tried to incorporate into the app as well, because it's just like making those
Yeah,
changes
yeah.
to
Oh,
the
well, that's it.
system
Yeah,
also changes how you
yeah,
think as well.
yeah. Well, the series of articles I wrote that I'm basing this conversation off, I wrote just before I did the app because I was preparing, I was upgrading my understanding of economics so I could make the app, if that makes sense.
Yeah, laying the foundation.
Um, yeah, exactly. It was me doing the process that I'm talking about, so I could do the process. And now there's an app, and you can do the process, and hopefully everything will get better.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so a few ways you can do it in the workplace. See, there's on the procedural level, identify ineffectiveness, inefficiency, and look for risk and see if you can just like mitigate it. And whatever that means in your personal situation, like, run with that, try to figure that out. But some examples that are maybe not as obvious, but can be the same. You can reinforce your position in the social network of the organization. And you can do it by just sort of like trading reciprocal favors. Like I do something for you, you do something for me.
Tick for
And
tack. You know?
yeah, and one thing you can do when you're doing that is like if you help someone and then they do something for you, and then that frees up a little bit of time and energy for you, and you see that they need help again, especially with something relating to ineffectiveness, inefficiency, or risk. So you help them again, and then now they're freed up a little, they help you again. If you can build those relationships in the network that you're in just by trading sort of like favors back and forward, things can become really, really, really efficient, especially because you can borrow other people's skills and resources. Like that's God mode,
Yeah.
um,
Plus, you get the respect
and
factor, and you also get essentially you get the authority kind of situation going on, where it's like not only are you trying to make things better, but you actually made things better, and people can see that.
yeah, yeah, and it also helps you filter out amongst your coworkers who's someone that you can trust and who's someone that you can't. And the easiest way to do it is just to do small favors for people here and there and see who sort of responds. And it's good to know who you can't expect to return a favor, because there's always people needing stuff done, and you can just kind of filter those people.
Yeah. Plus, you're not
And then,
everywhere all the time,
yeah,
so you need to like get the best return on investment of the people you're working with.
yeah, exactly. Um, and I like favors, but secondary to favors, I like compliments. In that, if somebody does something in a way that's good, let them know, because just about everyone's insecure on some level, and just to have it like acknowledged when you've done something in a way that's good can make a big difference to someone's day. It can,
Yeah.
really raises them up, and it's
It
it's kind of
also
free to give a compliment. You can't do it disingenuously though. You gotta mean it.
not only that is borrowing from the psychology discipline. It's a positive reinforcement, so they're more likely to do the same thing again.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just such a good thing you can do. You can do the same with gifts, where sometimes you can return a favor in the form of like, rather than perhaps doing some work for someone in kind of like a reciprocal way, you can just give them something. And if you can, perhaps in response to ineffectiveness, inefficiency, and risk, you can offer them something that's a little piece of capital that will help them push forward.
Yeah.
Um,
And hopefully in the future you'll build relationships and be able to plan and do things outside of work that are more in line with what you want to do. And like a
yeah,
clear example is this podcast, the app. Like I was in a band for a while where that worked out pretty well for a while, and like those things become meaningful rather than just working.
and it's and like you can do gift in the form of, even like, it doesn't have to be like, a new knife that's more effective than the old one. It can just be a little token of appreciation. And both are acceptable because it's like you got to be like a human being, and if somebody's being good for you, you should try to right by them. Like you don't really need any model to tell you to do that. Like it's just what you should do.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like one of the things that I've been pondering over a lot lately is kindness, and I really do think that in a moment of grief and a moment of hardship, a piece of kindness can go so far, and you can get
Yeah,
someone's respect for years off one interaction. And it's like you cannot miss those opportunities, not only for your personal gain, but it's also nice to be nice to people. Like it
yeah. It's
really
like,
is.
well, that's the world you want to live in, like a world where people just are just kind.
Yeah. And like then
Um,
that buffers you for when things fall apart. And like you want to be able to have that.
yeah, and you hear all the time about good people being rewarded by like groups of people who basically decided that, I don't know, maybe it was a good person, something bad happened to them, and then everyone got together and just went, nah, not to them. We're gonna we're gonna make this right.
It reminds me of the
Like,
Waterboy with Adam Sandler, where he goes through and he's like been kind to everyone, and then he has like a health thing or something go on, and his mama gets sick or whatever, and the whole town's outside the hospital, and he's like, we got you! Like, we got this!
yeah, I'm gonna have to rewatch that movie. I don't even remember it.
Dude, it's
Um,
so good.
the next thing too, a small investment in this workplace style, communicate intention. Like if you're planning on fixing something or planning on like making a change, let people know ahead of time so that you don't shock them. Let people kind of plan around what you're doing. And by communicating intention, if you say, I'm going to move this thing, it's in the road, and someone says, well, it's actually useful for this reason, and you didn't know it, then you can say, okay, maybe I will get maybe a smaller thing for the space or something like that. Like you can reach the compromise and then act rather than acting and having like the conflict.
Yeah,
So
that's golden advice right there.
yeah, so communicating intentions another way, which you can. It's funny because it's an investment, yet it doesn't fit the bill of like a regular investment unless you sort of think about it.
Well, you've got to read in the social kind of game there, because it's not clear that that would be helpful unless you actually do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. um. All right, let's finish with this because investments have payoffs. As far as I can tell, there's 4 types of payoffs. That this will lead us into the discussion of compound interest next conversation. So there's expected success. There was a capital threshold, you identified it, you did a thing, you crossed it, world's better now. You've got what you want. Expected success, it worked.
Yeah.
Unexpected success. This is when you cross an unknown capital threshold accidentally. This happens surprisingly often. You make a small change to one thing and then suddenly you've got a ton of energy in another area, or you make a small investment thinking it's going to give a small reward and you get a massive reward. Like unexpected success is quite common.
It's more common than regular success.
Yeah, I think so. And what unexpected success indicates is that whatever you're doing is working, and that maybe you don't quite understand why, but it's working. Expected failure. This one, it just completes the quadrant really, but it's like you thought something wouldn't work, you did it, it didn't work. The good thing about it is that you were right. I mean, so if you gave it a good effort and it didn't work and you didn't think it would work, it's like, okay, the world works the way that you thought it did. And then there's unexpected failure. And there was some unknown thing that ruined whatever it was you're intending for the investment to do. And that happens a lot because you just don't know everything. So when you get an unexpected failure, which you'll get them often, everybody gets them often, doesn't matter how smart you are, because you don't know enough because reality is so complicated.
Yeah.
All it means is there's just some small thing you didn't know. Try work out what it was, try to readjust your plan, and go again.
Yeah.
And
like those last two remind me of kind of this concept of mapping your world and like their benefits. That's a success. You got strengths and benefits out of doing those things, even though you failed.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like you should be getting, I would say, to the degree that you're getting more unexpected success than unexpected failure, it's a sign that you've got things mapped, or at least you've mapped things well.
Well enough to be able to
But
proceed.
yeah. But there's always going to be unexpected failure. You just got to roll with it. Like I mean, eventually that's how you die. Things go wrong.
Yeah. All right.
You just got to ride it out as long as you can.
We've gone a little bit over time. Is there anything else you'd like to add before I close?
Nah, we're ready. We'll talk about nonlinear returns next time and
All right.
build in the compound interest.
This has been the first podcast between Aaron and William on investing, and I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you for tuning in. Bye.